Goodbye, Rainer, and hello, everyone else. We're in a best of 5 from HomeStory Cup in the upper bracket of the playoffs. In the bottom left of Inside and Out, it is Clem. And in the top right, we have the red Protoss, Zoun. Whose name is all over the place, really. So anyone who's gonna come at me with the, well, it's actually pronounced this or that way. It's a whole mess, really. Because I do know where it's supposed to be from, but there is a Reddit comment that I think really deserves to be highlighted whenever Zoun gets cast and people pronounce the name differently or, you know, straight up incorrectly. And I might try and find it in between these games, because it just perfectly sums up my feelings on the matter, really. But Zoun is what we're gonna go with. So, anyways, aside from the name, going for a low ground gateway here could have a fast outlet across the map if you wanted to. Also gonna, of course, help him against any Hellion shenanigans later on, which all Terrans are doing nowadays. So that might just be the only reason, and Zoun is not gonna go for a Zealot. So, nope, just going for the wall then. Zoun's a bit of a mystery for me when he goes into tournaments. There was a phase months ago, I guess a long time ago, kind of. Well, time's very relative. I really don't know what's happened in 2022. Anyways, where he was the talk of the town. He did particularly well in a super tournament alongside, I guess, a decent amount of other Protoss, but kind of carried that through. And people wondered if he was the next big thing in StarCraft, especially because we had been at a bit of a lull, right? The European players we know today that were at one point the talk of the town have been the talk of the town for a long time. So, like Clem, for instance. So we were kind of waiting for someone else past, I guess, Max Pax. Trigger showed his face, right, more consistently in the top 4 of North America. So there was that talk, but then there was also, okay, what specifically about Korea? And then Zoun said, well, what about me? You know, I'm kind of cool. Thing is, Zoun is another one of those classic stories where technically his results are basically new, and perhaps in the grand scheme of things, he is a fresher face in StarCraft, but he is yet another professional player who has played for a very long time. But he had his phase, he had his big talk, the hubbub was around him, and then it kind of died off, and people would give him credit based off those past successes, as they should, but then it never really got to be any more talk. So, at some point, I feel people stopped really hyping him up.
Base is under attack.
And then he came back in and defeated some people, punched up a little bit more than expected. Actually, really brought it to Cyril in Atlanta, although he did inevitably lose. And, well, now we're here at HomeStory Cup, where apparently he's having a pretty damn decent run. Playing awfully protective, as we do have Clem going for a, at least, factory expand, something that Zoun was able to scout, right? He is going to take it nice and cautious, get a shield battery in the main base, and then have his wall plus his units in the natural. So that takes care of that. For the most part, you know, aside from any really, really weird stuff that you would not find a lot of pro gamers doing, like a very early tank push or something like that. My chat has released a poll. How do you pronounce Z-O-U-N? Do you pronounce it Z-O-U-N or Z-O-U-N or C-O-U-N? Anyways, like I said, we're sticking with Zoun. So 2 base, a nice, very defensive opener. We even have, what, a total of 3 gateways coming in, so that's going to give you all of the production flexibility that you need. The kind of downside to this, though, is that if Clem goes for factory expand, which he did, and then doesn't really do a lot of committing with it, which most of the times Terrans don't. You know, we have Spirit occasionally throwing in a Thor all in, but it's not usually a lot of dedication. This 2 base defense can turn a little bit overly defensive. And God forbid, as set up as you are, you still mess up against the harassment. That would be the worst case scenario for the Protoss. So thankfully, the Widowmine drop didn't do anything it should not have. And we even have a bit of clearing out of the scouting units. Zoun now feels a bit more emboldened with the Warp Prism on the way, Blink done, and the first kind of real harassment dealt with So he's going to make his way across the map. 3 gateways gives you the production flexibility. I said that earlier. That means that if they aren't attacking you, maybe don't use it at all. If they are attacking you, definitely use it defensively. And if they aren't attacking you, but you want to get a little spicy yourself, then by all means, go across the map with a warp prism and actually warp in a couple of times. 3 is not the same as 4. It's not going to be very dedicated, and it's definitely not. We already see a robotics bay on the way, 3rd base about to be set up here. But if you saw an opportunity, then 3 gateways could make you pretty aggressive. Not here, not to be the case here. So Warp Prism does get some harassment going for Stalker's one-shot in SCV. Why not? And so we have 3 go down. And the Warp Prism is also doing a little bit of scouting and just making presence, basically, for the Protoss, as Clem, very focused on his macro production at this point, is not even really concerned about getting something done on the other side of the map. I want to say that Marauder's trapped. He's giving the tank a nice big old hug. But let's go ahead and take a look at the overall game. All right, technically not much has happened. But in a lot of what's not happening in terms of the, action figures butting heads against each other, there's not much of that. There is a lot going on as far as the macro. And if we look at the numbers right now, you wouldn't really feel great about Zoun's position. At the end of the day, Zoun looks to have over-defended. Maybe he'll be fine for the rest of the game, recover, and even win this game. I don't know. But, 4 probes isn't bad. It could have been worse. It looks like it's just a terrible game for the Protoss. And it's definitely because of the way that he stayed on 2 bases forever. He got the earlier shield battery, he got the shield battery in the natural, he then made sure to get 3 gateways, super delay the Nexus, no technology advancements, the Stalker counterattack could not really be said to be a counterattack, it was so small, and Clem has been very close in worker counts, if not maybe at times even. And that's terrible. That's absolutely terrible, as 2 mules have been dropping for some time. This is a very difficult position for Protoss players, especially because, well, maybe Splash can cover your ass, a couple of Colossus can do a lot. We now also have the Raven in play. So, there's no way that Zoun could have done a mass gateway type of composition with the economy that he had, so that wouldn't have worked. And going Colossus is probably the best thing you can do. But what happens with the interference matrix? It's going to be tough. They also have trouble dealing with any type of concave, which these rallied units might have accidentally created. Not sure that was on purpose. Clem was also dealing with some zealots in the main base as the Warp Prism chooses the exact right time to strike, and it takes up a decent amount of time. 8 SCVs also go down, and that is something for Zoun to say that he had, but he still can't give up the 3rd base for it. Like, that is not enough damage to say, okay, I guess we're gonna do like a base trade. Not gonna work out, and now the Colossus being easily miscontrolled when they get interference matrix. The AI is all over the place. One of them goes down, but the amount of buffer that was created during the hubbub, during the drop in the main, during the kind of initial contact of the 2 armies, Zoun actually got a decent amount of units out. So Clem, having rallied most of his units back at home, they deal with the zealots and then further harassment as well. It might still have the army supply, it might still be in the best position possible, but is not going to win the game right then and there. Doesn't really have to, though. You could easily argue. Zoun is now up 12 workers, and that's a much better count. It's still not fantastic. We're still not moving over to a 4th base, and it'd be very difficult to defend a 4th base, even if Zoun was trying to, saying, oh, maybe I can fit this in. Probably not. So, if this has been the case for the last 4 minutes, then it's hunky-dory. But Zoun has only taken that appropriate probe lead in this matchup very, very recently. So Clem now gets his 3rd CC down location. It still has the Raven, even repairing it up. Nice touch right there. Not much else to do, of course, as the drops and harassment and pushes has been lessened. It's still available for both of them, right? Clem could pick up, Warp Prism could drop in, but they're taking their time to chill. So Zoun has survived. Zoun has survived, still not in the best economic position. Army supply is not even with Clem, but again, Splash makes up for that, and shield batteries, of course. But now we're depending on Splash that is certainly one-hit wonders a lot of the time, especially against the likes of a professional Terran. Against us, their one-hit wonder matters a lot. Feels like 60 supply for us. Against Clem or Innovation is always the go-to Terran for me, even though he doesn't play anymore. Innovation or Maru, Yeah, it's gonna get maybe one shot, or buy time even. Not even gonna get a shot. And then they could be focus fired down. So still a very delicate game for Zoun, but certainly a playable one. Clem is looking for the opportunity, trying to get the distraction as well as the harassment in. Wouldn't mind drops so far, really not all that much to write home about, as the medevac at the very least gets to go home. But distraction, that did work out. There is zero vision where Clem had been posturing his army. A zealot was then placed or just avoided coincidentally from Clem. So the fourth base under attack before Zoun is really in position, but not going to be sniped. Able to return home quick enough not to be punished. And now it's Zoun that has maybe a bit more of that map control as he rushes in after this army, realizing, you know what, I can actually take that on. Also has the Warp Prism off to the right side at this point, so it can just enter into the natural, which would not do a whole lot, but again, that distraction could be big, or simply just go along with the main army. And that's exactly what it's looking to do. Raven is still involved, would love to get a couple of interference mages. Gonna go for the easy anti-armor missile, but on Stalkers, which shouldn't be the brunt of the force anyways, Colossus does get disabled, and that is quite the concave that Clem is working with defensively. Zoun's push into the Terran probably should not work, but if Clem makes a very severe mistake and actually pushes into the Protoss through this choke, then it absolutely still could. Colossus disabled, finally gets killed as well, but one more Colossus still in play is going to do a lot of damage to the Bio Army before it actually pushes through. Zealots coming in from that Warp Prism as well, once again able to help out, and a little bit of that fancy Ghost Micro from Clem, just to say that he did, just to say that he could. Disruptor shot comes in and actually grabs quite a few units, at least going to be worth the trade of that Disruptor. But Zoun is still down 30 supply, didn't actually have enough units to really abuse that choke as much as possible. Give him 3 Colossus in the same position, and of course, that is a very different story. No way that Clem actually pushes and chases down that army. But it is what it is. Zoun has lost a considerable amount of supply, an expensive slow building supply as well. He does still have 3 disruptors, which will cover his butt in direct engagements, but then one of the main problems right now would be trying to do any multitasking, try and have 1 disruptor in every base to fend all of the drops. Very unlikely to happen. Upgrades have also finally, I guess, evened up. Clem had 1-1 for a while over Zoun's +1, now it's +2. And Zoun is even thinking he can afford a second forge, which he is on 4-base mining. So, I guess he can. But he's also got to make sure to continue pumping out numbers of units, because the supply still looks a bit sketchy. 2-2 is on the way for Clem, as well as a ship upgrade, which could be signs of him trying to transition eventually into Liberators. I'm not sure his Vikings really need it, because I'm not sure Vikings really need it. The Colossus have not been made. A scan sees that it is pure Disruptor production right now, and I think Clem maybe let 1 more Viking finish and then is done with that, right? Zealot run-bys, buying time, killing a couple of SCVs, suppose in that fashion, combined together worth the 4 Zealots. And Zoun might still have that problematic supply gap, is not under pressure, and in fact, it's kind of puffing up his feathers right now and pushing into Clem, which, with Disruptors, is basically safe as long as you don't get surrounded, as long as you don't run out of shots either, which, you know, we're not talking necessarily about all 7 Disruptors on the front line, right? It's 5, and a lot of them have already shot their shot. Vikings land for a little bit of an extra bit of a concave. Disruptors getting sniped as well, not enough buffer to actually cover it, and a hidden Widow Mine getting a shot as well. I think we saw some snipes, at least attempted, and okay, last Disruptor is going to be the best one so far, but Clem still holds a very nice 30 army supply lead. 2-2 upgrades have finished, enhanced shockwaves as well. Everything a Terran needs to go ahead and end this game, but the mass Zealots right now will do the trick, and the Disruptors from behind, certainly Zoun showing his prowess with the Disruptor, is going to be enough to send Clem's, you know, initial, not all of his army basically, packing. It's got to go home, but the Disruptors go ahead and chase after it accidentally and also get sniped, so Zoun's still not recovering. Zoun is still on, basically, even more so, the brink of defeat. He was close to the edge for the past 5 minutes, now he's straight up on the edge, waving his hands around, trying not to fall off. It is gonna be pretty amazing if his Disruptor usage actually brings him back here, especially since he's down to just 2, so not super likely. Out-upgraded, outgunned, and possibly even out-teched. We do have the option of going into even a couple of Liberators, so that if Clem ever does find a position on Zoun side of the map, it really is not going to be something you can bust out of. But so far, no Liberators. Clem probably not just, it might not be that he's not thinking of it, it's that he really wants to continue pushing Zoun. You know, he knows he has a supply lead, he knows he has the stuff lead, just keep on throwing stuff at the guy and it should work, and as soon as you let your foot off the gas, that is when their 5 base economy, which it's been 5 base economy, you know, maybe not like 80, 90 probes, but it has been, that's when it's going to recover. So, you know, Liberators do change the style, they do change the pace of the game, and Clem is thinking maybe that that's not going to be necessary or the most helpful thing to do when you could just try and go after the disruptors, but holy shit, that is the biggest disruptor shot you will see, I guess, in this best of 5. I would just expect anyways. Clem with severe miss micro, really, right? He stopped shooting the disruptors. Am I wrong about that? I'm gonna go back and watch that. I think he was shooting the disruptors and then he clicked again so that his army just moved into a blank space or on top of a zealot or something like that. That was the great evener of this game, and yet we still don't have it completely even. Clem still has 20 more workers than his opponent, so economy's still on his side, and if he could just get a decent concave, we're still talking about a very good bio ball against delicate Protoss ball, I suppose. But once again, it's the choke at work here, and we have that problem. If Clem tries to push through into Splash, he could be losing way too much. Gonna go after the freebie disruptor off to the left side. Stim again to try and escape. Woodermine's gonna burrow up, make sure the zealots don't continue chasing after, and the disruptor takes what it can get, which are gonna be a couple of Woodermines, which are actually, it's kind of important. The number of zealots, the sheer number of zealots, especially if they ever get to surround themselves, is going to be enough to actually overwhelm the reinforcements. So it's very important that Clem would have either Woodermines to make it easy peasy, no zealots across this bridge, right? Or just continue stutter stepping like he is, which fortunately he's pretty consistent at. Disruptor snipe's not gonna happen, realize I was a bit too risky, but now he's gonna go after it. Nope, just kidding. Then at time. Disruptor had another shot. Really wanted to get those disruptors, but the flood of zealots is again going to provide a physical barrier to it. And Zoun lives yet again, another day. 5 disruptors, almost all on the front lines. Now they officially are. Once again, the choke at work. A couple of Woodermines did pop off to thin out the zealot line. But to go after 5 disruptors with almost all of them still having their shot, it's a bit sketch. Bit sketch. Zoun has been working at all times almost at a 30 supply difference. And it continues on right here. 40 supply difference. Vikings chase down basically a free Colossus. Planetary in the bottom right helps Clem chase down the retreating Protoss army. And now Zoun is back down to a 60 supply deficit. So there's like one point in this game after the 5-minute mark that Zoun had even up the supply after that huge hit right here. Other times it's been 30 plus supply difference. And, you know, the one time it did even up, it was workers, I guess, covering it for a while for Clem, but almost always it's also been directly in an army supply difference. I do wonder if Clem is making a mistake. Just take a pause here as the battle kind of slows down. I do wonder if Clem has too many SCVs, especially at 18 minutes in the game. He's finally got a new base up, so probably not exactly right now, but until this new base was up, I wonder how much he was very much inefficiently mining. And just, even if he isn't efficiently mining, you know, it's Terran late game. We should have not 80 workers, unless maybe it's more of a turtle game too. And even then, you know, you have 80 workers until a point and then you throw them away. No matter what, in a late game Terran game, you're going to see them throw away a certain amount of SCV supply, and I wonder if just 10 would really perfect Clem's army. But maybe theoretics for another day. Liberators are finally on the way, as Clem realizes the game has already slowed down anyways. Another great disruptor shot from Zoun, and an okay one as well. This is not a planetary, this is the main base lifted, something safe to go back to, except maybe technically some static defense, which Colossus do have a habit of running into. Drop on the right side is hoping to catch Zoun by surprise a little bit, right? We've kind of stopped with a lot of the multitasking in this game. It's been a lot more about those big battles and occasionally it's a very small zealot run by. But Zoun did have some units prepared. Does recall almost haphazardly by the looks of it, but basically enough, so whatever. To send those 2 medevacs at least keeping themselves off to the dead space. So they're not actually engaged in anything, and now they're just gonna fly back home. Clem's still trying to engage on the left side, but keep in mind, again, 20 supply is in workers. So if Zoun is maxing out, which he's currently doing, he's gonna have a bigger army supply. And then Clem's army is not all together. Neither is Zoun's right now, to be fair. But one army has a lot more splash to work with, which is going to cover any potential deficit due to splits, as long as they're properly controlled, which Zoun's been properly controlling them. Using them to help disengaging, and then using the zealots to help disruptors disengage when necessary. Exactly, showcased here. Clem's had the upgrade lead for a while and will continue to. 3-3 versus 3-2, but it doesn't matter when up against Disruptors. Liberators will help a ton, really changing up the way that Zoun has to engage the army. And that's not a whole lot of Stalkers. 2 Liberators doesn't seem like a whole lot, but a couple extra shots can make a world of difference. Disruptors not getting the biggest shots possible, but this fight actually extended across the screen a couple of times, and Zoun is the one with the faster reinforcements. Clem is forced to retreat once again. Even army supply. Liberator number 3 getting a couple of those extra crucial shots, but mostly on Stalkers. Not something that's maybe a little more important, like the Disruptors, which continue throwing out their shots to stop the army from engaging and saving this base. Clem is going to have to forfeit a very important base. He's almost out of mining everywhere else, although his bank is fine. He just has to freaking use it. It's the positioning that is working so hard against him. The Disruptors just one shot after another, abusing the choke, grabbing the SCVs, grabbing the command center, even a force field. Almost hit the trick there, but even still makes it even more of a choke. Clem cannot chase the army down. It'd be so tempting to. You know, you're counting the shots a little bit. You think, I know which ones still have their ammo. I'm going to go after it, when there's mostly Disruptors that the Protoss is depending on. Not a whole lot of other things. A guy like Clem could do that, but it's a bit of a gamble, and one that did not work out for him a few times in this game already. Added the choke in there with the force field and the map design, and yeah, he's not going to go chasing. Clem has lost a very important base indeed, where Zoun is kind of gaining a base. It is not near complete, to be fair, but it is on its way and not harassed, and Zoun is the one that is still aggressing. He's still the one on the front lines. He still has all the Disruptors, although maybe not for long. It's going to be a very dangerous thing that Clem is doing. He did only use a portion of his army, which really makes Disruptors difficult to use then. That's where the Zealots or Stalkers are supposed to basically be helping them out, but they're going to try and target down the Planetary, which if they do it fast enough, will be totally fine. And they do it, they get the snipe. Disruptors on the backside also getting a couple of shots. They do get sniped themselves, a sacrifice that was hopefully worthwhile. With Zoun is once again going to grab an orbital command center and the Planetary, of course, so 2 for 1 deal, and a beautiful Disruptor shot. 17 SCVs went down as well, so Clem has not had that worker lead in a while, I guess, but at least he has taken down a base for a base. It just was that 2 for 1 deal, wasn't it? He lost this base, then 2 down here, so that one single Nexus is not going to be enough, especially as, coincidentally enough, Zoun has gotten another fresh base. Without it, it would certainly be a worse story for the Protoss. As it is, Clem did use that bank that I was talking about. He was at 2,000, 1,000, something like that. Finally was able to use that bank. That was the cushion gained from the initial lead he had in this game, and really continued lead. I would never say that Zoun really had a concrete lead, perhaps positional lead, perhaps momentum lead, whatever, but yeah, I suppose you combine all things together, never really a lead. So Clem had that, has used it, and now if it turns to be like minute 12, minute 16, minute 18, whatever, and Zoun somehow takes care of a 50 army supply difference, Clem is going to be screwed. He doesn't have that cushion. But at least Clem has something better than a cushion. He's got a bunch of Liberators. 14 Liberators in total. That is extremely difficult for a Protoss without air units to handle. Now, Protoss, who is handling the Terran, basically, who is making them run around, can do wonders, can really pick off the Liberator count, but a Protoss who is on the defensive, as we see here, that's where it gets really, really tough. Does find the Liberators sort of looking the wrong way for a lot of that fight, at least some of them, but it is not going to be enough. The Liberator transition making it too difficult for Zoun to come back, and Clem, after 24 minutes, of which 80% he was ahead, gets game number 1. GG. I don't remember when that big shot was, man. But I feel like the game was supposed to end there. Someone stole the time zone at that point and didn't return it. It'll probably take too long to find it. But I swear he mismicroed. It's just painful. Oh well. Game number 2. Game number 2 is going to be on Cosmic Sapphire. In the top left, up 1, it is Clem. In the bottom right, it is Zoun. Isn't it a streamer's job to mispronounce names anyways? That does create the clips. But here's my favorite response. Shout out to this guy. Reddit's Megalomania. Favorite response to someone complaining about how we can't pronounce Zoun's name. I think a post complaining about the poor English language pronunciation of opinion version of a Mandarin word chosen by a Korean person who had probably never heard the word pronounced correctly before he chose it as his gamer tag is just wonderfully constructive to global racial politics, and we should all listen carefully. It's just, you can't paraphrase that, you know? You can't just be like, well, the comment was kind of like this, you know? Like you gotta read it word for word. I don't think it's really that much of an issue. I honestly believe that it's more of a annoyance issue, because like people will bring up how it can be issues in many senses of the word issue, I suppose, but in terms of an annoyance issue, I think far more people are likely to comment in chat, or basically chat. If we try hard at basically. Anytime someone says Zoun in the broadcast, I think most of the time chatters are like, yep, whatever, I don't, you know, I'm not even commenting on it. And the minute someone tries to go with the Zoun, whatever, it's when there's a bunch of lols and what faces and baby rage and all that good stuff. Good on you, Zoun. Not only did you give some promise to the new blood of the Korean scene, you've also created more conversations and debates and engagement in StarCraft. So a round of applause. Seriously though, fortunately, the person who has brought a little bit more optimism to the young blood Korea conversation is fortunately also a very fun player to watch. So, and disruptor usage, clearly a highlight. But also that he is a very varied Protoss, able to throw out a lot of styles, compositions, openers. At times, it clearly is the case that he's favoring one over another. So I think those are the times where he's had his worse performances. Not his absolute worst, but just worse. Is when it was clear that he was stuck in the mindset of, well, this thing is the thing that is going to work. I need to try this over and over and over again. If he doesn't do that, he's a wild card for sure. Clem, also with just the necessity, I think, of being a tournament player, a serious tournament contender, as well as Terran in today's day and age. He's got to do some cheeses at some point, and he is going to go for a Hellion drop. Now, Zoun has gone for a Phoenix opener, something that Clem technically did not scout. I'm also not sure if he scouted a whole lot in terms of the gateway production. If you see a bunch of gateways, if you basically see more than one adept, you know or are inclined to believe that it's a Stargate opener. If it's Stalker first or Stalker second, you're kind of a little more in the dark. So I'm not sure about that, but he is going to, whatever it is, force the issue. There's not much else to do. You've got to do the Hellion drop, and you got to hope that it does a lot of damage. But technically, the Phoenix opener is supposed to be helpful against it. They were not in position right off the bat, which is usually how Phoenix do not respond to this correctly. But I would say so far so good. The Phoenix were a couple seconds late to the party, but they brought some really fine whiskey, so everyone forgave them, and it's all good. 7 probes for this is, I would say, even sometimes the bare minimum. You know, are there times where the Phoenix are literally in position and then the medevac panics and runs around and dies without ever letting a Hellion go? I suppose. But most of the time, you know, just because you don't know exactly where they're coming from, you're gonna lose probes. And he did not scout the starport because it's in this little thingy. This annoying thingy where people hide proxies all the time. But there's a lot of places people hide proxies on Cosmic Sapphire. So Clem, I don't know, as I said, bare minimum, so I don't think you can necessarily be happy about that, especially because he did end up losing the medevac. It really had no chance of getting away. It kind of almost juked the Phoenix, but not quite. But Clem has at least initially reduced any counterattack damage, which is now one of the more important talking points. Okay, the Phoenix did their job basically against the Hellions, sure. And now they're going to try and get some revenge. It's a bit later, it's usually not as much, but it is something. And if you can stop them from doing anything, ever touching your base, it can really do wonders for streamlining the Terran's follow-up. But if they can do something, even just a couple of SCVs or even a Cyclone, it'd be quite helpful. Problem is, you basically don't want to do anything if it means losing a Phoenix. Extremely expensive units that aren't particularly helpful if there's only one of them. They do need to be at a certain number. And they need to be constantly active, so if they're dead, they can't be active. That's how that works. The Phoenix Colossus is a rather safe way to play the follow-up. Only defending 2 bases usually makes life a lot easier. And not just because of multitasking, but because you can also just abuse usually 1 shared choke. So that's exactly what a Colossus would do very well with. Clem is trying to hit this with stim, combat shields, and +1. Good old-fashioned timing here, but it is mostly Marine. So, provided there's a little bit of micro on the Protoss front, and not as much counter micro, I suppose, on the Terran front. I mean, 1 Colossus can still do a heck of a lot of damage. Zoun's even bought a couple of extra crucial seconds, I would say. Because even though I'm saying the Colossus can do the trick, it's still... that supply doesn't give me a lot of hope. He's bought some extra seconds with the Phoenix. A little bit more running around here for Clem, and any chance of maybe catching 1 Colossus defending is gone. Jumping on it and then forcing it back to a shield battery, realizing it's still not enough damage, killing the shield battery. A real series of unfortunate events. And now that's gone. So Clem kind of ran around for a couple extra seconds, realized it wasn't a 3rd base, thought probably my ability to really push the guy is limited. So there's no need to do it right here, right now, which is basically true. But now we're up to 2 Colossus, an Immortal, a couple Sentries, shield battery still in charge. The way that Clem is now directing his push is beneficial to Zoun. He's able to use a shield battery that he's had to protect effectively 2 bases. If Clem's going to continue pushing from this direction, then it's one of those shared choke type of things again, even though it's not really supposed to be. As soon as Clem is able to send something over to the left side, they could be a lot more difficult. The shield battery's kind of far back. We're still on a bit of a vulnerable composition. Colossus. They've got them chicken legs. We know they're unstable. But Clem, while he is still building up a hefty supply, his macro working up behind the scenes, his upgrade's gonna be far ahead in this game. He's not gonna kill Zoun. It's not going to kill him. We'll see what happens as time goes on. But once again, I feel like Zoun is in a lot of trouble. Similar to last game. Quick check on the income. You can see that Clem has been, at times, even really dominating the income. It certainly has been ahead. And that's, is, again, a little more acceptable if you're going for this style of play. They were, again, trying to go for mass gateways. It'd be, I think, more difficult, but still means that Clem's going to have quite a hefty army supply, and not a terrible army supply either, and certainly one that is very microable. Zoun's is not so much microable as it is perfect in perfect conditions. So if you can really dissect what the Terran's doing by scouting, vision, even a little bit of just kind of prediction, you play a lot of Terran yourself versus Protoss, you know the Terran you're up against, then you can have the right units in the right position at all times. And that's what Colossus Phoenix is going to do pretty well at. But the downside is that as soon as you misjudge, as soon as you misread, then suddenly 100 army supply is going to be coming in against your 20 army supply, and you're going to go, oh, whoops, my bad. So all these scouters right here are quite important, kind of nicely placed too. Very difficult for the Terran to notice them. Clem is probably really trying to make sure he's unnoticed, but never succeeding. I don't think he's quite ready to punch it anyways, so it's not truly a problem. But, you know, he's trying to posture, he's trying to keep active, and he's trying to find any little misstep from Zoun, and so far has not found it. So Zoun has also then, in turn, kind of played this segment of the game, I suppose, perfectly. Has not taken any unnecessary losses, has built up slowly but surely into a fine Protoss army. A little under-upgraded, though. Still gotta worry about that. And Clem, with his macro having been settled for quite some time, 3-base saturation, is moving on to a 4th base, moving on to more upgrades, and moving on to those ghosts. So Zoun is like, yeah, I got some Archons, and I'll look at all these Zealots, and if ghosts appeared right now, well, he'd still be kind of screwed. So, as ghosts appear, what do you need? Disruptors. Hell yeah. Disruptors don't have that solid counter, that real hard counter. EMPs can help them be sniped, but they do not stop the ball from shooting. Imagine if they did. Disruptors would be kind of useless. Zoun is at a 20-ish army supply deficit. But all of his army is together. It's around a shield battery, and an overcharge is going to save the initial Colossus from death. As the Vikings realized there wasn't a whole lot of mobility in terms of shooting up. Stalkers were warped in. Blink will finish. That the Vikings had an opportunity, and they were unable to use it for a freebie, basically. They might still get a couple of these Colossus, very effectively so, but now it's about the Disruptors. Holy shit. Okay, that's okay, that's okay. Disruptor did not hit the Terran army. But we still have a couple of more Disruptors. The Bio Ball has been stimmed. It's been injured. And it's actually not as healthy as it could be, or as spread out as it could be coming into this fight. Also a bit of an anti-timing just before 2-2 is finished. Now it is. But Clem does not really gain anything from these engagements. Perhaps technically he's put the shield battery overcharge in remission currently, but it's coming back online very, very soon. If not already, actually. Zoun is not only going to grab a 4th base, but also a 5th. A good disruptor shot to start this engagement off. Clem has lost any of that direct army supply lead. Now it's only the upgrade lead. And once the 4th and 5th base come online, which apparently both of them are, then Clem's also going to lose the base lead. You know, he's been able to be on the offensive so much in this game for so much of his setup going into 4 bases that I wonder if faster Liberators really would have just been too much for Zoun to deal with, as he had to defensively posture for so long. But we'll never know. The Liberator transition did not happen all that quickly for various reasons, to be clear. But it is not what has happened in this game. It is not something that Clem can really theorize about, as he's currently now on the defensive. We have a similar game to last, where Zoun has built up the army of Disruptors, primarily, to actually get on the map, be a little bold. Still have to be very careful, though. Still have to be very careful. That is a lot of space for the Terran to spread out, man. And the Disruptor shot so far, the best one, was on mostly a handful of Vikings, which aren't necessarily the most important thing anymore. So Clem is going to rebuild Liberators at this stage instead of those Vikings, which I think make a lot of sense. With that pushback as well, with Zoun having to retreat, we once again have the Terran on the offensive, so really strengthening the Liberator transition. If the Protoss is out here against the Liberators, it's a lot of time to buy. There's a lot of pickoffs that can happen. If the Liberators are taking care of this choke, you're probably just going to straight up lose the base, and you're going to have to fight somewhere else another day. But the Liberators ain't here yet, so Clem is tracking around trying to find the Protoss army out of position, or something of the army out of position. So far, not so good. I love those single Phoenix trying to still help out, by the way. I'm helping. Are you? Maybe. I guess. Upgrade still favoring Clem as he tries to take a 5th base. Should be turned into a planetary, actually, exactly as I was talking about it. But Zoun has gotten 2 bases up at once, which is kind of a bummer. That's the best word for it. You know, Clem knew it was happening. Clem wanted to stop it, but he just couldn't, so... Bummer, man. He's at least gonna deny any mining, but there was not much mining anyways. It's more the concept that as soon as probes are out of minerals to mine, they can transfer immediately. That makes that 5th base look so promising for the future. Bigger Zealot run by coming in before the planetary is quite done, but it was gonna finish, and there was just enough reinforcements to stop that from doing very much. Zealot's gonna choose to run away. Best case scenario for them. And Clem once again focuses up on the forward position, but you know, that Zealot run by, buying time, buying a distraction, also taking the Liberators out from any potential instant reinforcement path. They first went over there, right? They didn't go over here, and now Zoun's a little bit more on the map again. A couple of EMPs are necessary. Take out those frontline Archons, and then it'd be lovely to have 1 or 2 on top of the Disruptor as well, but it's 9 Disruptors, so even if all of them were at half health, you're not sniping 9 Disruptors. No. No, you're just not. You're just not. 3-3 is finished up. Zoun is about to finish 3-2, so still within 1 upgrades, but it's again all about the Disruptors anyways. Yeah, like I'm obligated to talk about upgrades, though. It's almost, I guess maybe it's the StarCraft 2 caster's equivalent to saying the game score, you know? Like a football game. Now the Liberators are on the front line, and this is supposed to be almost the death sentence for the Protoss. This is a mess. Holy shit, this is one of the largest battles you could ever see in StarCraft. Taking up the entire screen. Going every which way. And usually when that happens, one person is more frustrated than the other, and it's bad for them. But here it actually came out to be a somewhat even supply. That quickly changed, however. Within 2 seconds, it went from even supply to a 50 supply lead for Clem. And Zoun really has no answers to the Liberators. Almost got another great shot in the bio to help him survive. But 5 bases to 5 bases. Clem with the 50 army supply lead, the upgrade lead, the Liberators, although now turned once again the wrong way, forced to stim an already injured army to try and react to that. We'll take care of the Stalkers, and that is not going to change this series. The Liberators are still up. Disruptor gets a nice little tag there, but now the Colossus are also going to go down, and Zoun just can't recover a 60 supply difference when he is on the ropes. If this was happening on Clem's side of the map, and Zoun had severely misjudged an attack, there might have been a recovery, but up against his own economy, up against his own reinforcements, it's not looking so hot. Clem is continuing to rally forward, which sometimes is not the right thing to do. Sometimes, you know, a couple of Marauders will not beat the instant warping of 12 Stalkers, but in this case, I think it'll do the trick. Zoun is going down 0-2 in this series, but he has been fighting tooth and nail in these games. Positions which a worse Protoss would have left, or just straight up been forced to leave, I suppose. At minute 10, goes into a 25-minute game, and now an 18-minute game, although, to be fair, it's a game where we're watching someone die very, very slowly. So let's call this one a 16-minute game. And then that fight happened, and then Zoun was screwed. And there you have it, GG. Zoun doesn't give up, never surrender, especially when you have Disruptors. But Clem has got a handle on it so far. I can see how maybe Zoun still bring this back. Clem is not locking this up nice and tight. Again, maybe some of those victories could have come sooner, but I think in particular for Cosmic Sapphire, it's really hard to make those victories come as soon as possible in one of the largest maps in the map pool. So let's go to game 3. Revisit the 5-minute mark to see what Zoun had. 5 minutes? He would have just lost like 7 probes to the Hellions, right? So he would have had his Phoenix counterattacking at that point. Good night, Jesu. I was taking third at 7 minutes because he prioritized getting Phoenix Colossus up first. It wasn't a faster third base. I don't think the probe damage was game over at all. But I do think just with the way that a Protoss mass gateway fast third base kind of plays out, that early harassment can just kind of throw you off too much. And I think a safer way to play is definitely to go into the Colossus first. No, because as soon as he had his first Colossus, he saw that the attack was underway. So if he had gotten expansion while he saw the attack move out, he might have been able to get it up on the left side, because Clem was only choosing one direction to push into, but if you basically try to get the base and then Clem actually had pushed to the left and just got a simple cancel, it's like, why did he even bother? A third later is normal, more normal, after early harassment and a Colossus build. Let's head into game number 3 on Data C. It's supposed to be a pun, but I refuse to certify it. In the top right, it is Clem. Bottom left, it is Zoun. So Clem is getting basically a good start. And then on being unable to finish the Protoss with the first push. Which, worst Protoss, I think, who might have been a little more stubborn or just choosing different directions for their game plan right off the bats, probably would have fallen to it. If we saw last game, Zoun was planning on going into Phoenix Charge and then said, oh, well, I took a little bit of damage. I'm still going to try and grab my third base when I did and try and play out Phoenix Charge. I mean, it might have worked. I still don't think that was enough damage to say, okay, Zoun, good luck, man. And then leave him for dead. But I think it also would have been more difficult to cover that first attack from Clem. You would have had the help a little bit of the map being large, and you would have had the help of perhaps Clem going to the wrong third base initially as well. But I'd still think it'd be very difficult. Your zealot count wouldn't be that high with a guy's stutter step micro. You'd be panic warping in zealots. You'd really have to toe the line there. Something that, you know, Zest was very good at. He would almost always go for months. He was always going into fast third nexus and a lot of gateways. And, you know, damn anything else that ever happened in the game. But Zoun is certainly not sticking to that. He is at least adapting to the scenario and playing very almost old-fashioned Protoss, I guess, when necessary. But it does suck that it's either a case of him getting a little bit harassed too much, perhaps, in last game with 7 probes, or him taking the threat of damage too far. Not that you don't take it too seriously, you should take it seriously, but he's over-defending. So it feels like Zoun, for one reason or another, has kind of been suppressed from what could be his actual full potential. The first 5-6 minutes aren't really lining up for him. And that could change if he, you know, chooses to go for a more aggressive opener himself. Or Clem goes for a very basic bare bones opener, like no guesswork necessary whatsoever. And this would be kind of one of them, I guess. Well, no, he's transferring over to a factory, so it's still, it's a proxy starport. So no, this is still one thing that Zoun would have to be wary of. He has to go, okay, could be drop, or it could be just something into 2 Alien 2, what am I? If there's some way for Zoun to confirm 100% that this was like a 1 rack CC into a 1-1-1 would have mind drop, Zoun, I think, would have a lot more play in his early to mid game. But Clem is kind of leading him, which is not totally unexpected in the matchup. But some other Protosses, in particular Hero, would be the best go-to Protoss. I think they'd be doing this series, and they'd be kind of frustrated that they've been following, and the other guy's been leading, and they go like, no, screw this, and they change it up big. But Zoun is just right now, right, going for the defensive posture. I don't think there's really anything else he could do. Just opted into a normal opener into a Stargate, and once again Phoenix, trying to find a potential proxy, because when you see that factory with reactor, you have to think about it. It doesn't have to be proxy, it doesn't have to be even a drop in general, but it's something that is the most deadly thing. It's the deadliest thing that could happen, so it's the main concern for you. The Phoenix actually floated by it, which is usually a bad sign. Second Phoenix does come to play, and the Adepts will actually get one shot right off the bat. All of these things can really make or break the difference of the first 4 Hellions getting the perfect lineup, or the first 3 Hellions, right? That's still the one-shot potential. And 4 Hellions not getting a shot, only 3 Hellions getting a shot, and a haphazard shot. And then Hellions just look stupid. When they all fire different directions, they look freaking stupid. And that kind of happened there. So 6 probes, again, is not... It's like the bare minimum. Very few Protoss games happen where you don't scout the starport and, like, deny it or camp the medevac with your Phoenix. You're not going to have a game that you lose less than 6, I think. Unless you do camp the starport. Someone's going to dig up a replay where someone has no idea it's on the way and defends with 0 probe losses. I know it, but it's got to be really rare. So Zoun, not because of that, he was already grabbing his gases, seems to just be playing a best of 5 TVP against Clem with a more conservative style of Phoenix Colossus or Colossus in mind. But the biggest change up here was that he actually got his 3rd Nexus before all the hubbub. So it's been building, it was put down before the technology. It could be greedy, but if he defends it well, it defends it well. So that's something that's been missing from the last couple of games. He's been over-defending and unable to sneak the probe out, or thinking that he can't get the 3rd Nexus at the time that he could, and it has been hurting him, even though he's made every game look very, very close. So this should feel a lot better for Zoun. He is going to go into a bit of a dangerous disruptor game right off the bat. Colossus are weak-kneed, but they are dependable. Which aren't usually things that go hand in hand, but they are dependable. Disruptors, they're here for a good time, not a long time. A lot of the time. Clem has got his build order obviously all lined up. Nothing happened on his side of the map, and the Phoenix had a very, very brief stance on the side of Clem's map. Didn't do anything. They are scouting, though. They are scouting for the best strike possible. They are scouting, and 2 Marines. That's not really the best. That's not the best. It's not even a spare. I don't know what you'd call the other things in bowling, because I'm not a bowler. But that's not good, because now the Disruptor also dies. Questionable start for Zoun. Who, you know, obviously if it was a Colossus, wouldn't have been even out there to begin with. Second Disruptor is not going to get anything either, and that is the last Disruptor for another 10 seconds. The Bioballs got their upgrades. They are looking to grab something important with this push. Still recognizing the power of the Disruptor once it's off cooldown. And the second Disruptor has also popped, but also Charge is finished up, right? So it's not the overwhelming numbers. That just makes this an easy peasy A move. But he's once again dodged both Disruptor shots, and now it is only the Zealots to deal with. I mean, the Immortals getting some shots off, and the Phoenix are helping as well. This might be enough. +1 also kicked in prior to this engagement, and this is going to be a hold. It is going to be a hold. If Clem had the power of instant reinforcements, it absolutely would not have been, but it is a hold, and you held with all of those slow-building robo units intact as well. 3 Disruptors and an Immortal. And now we're going back into Immortals. I'm actually gonna like. I would still not mind a single Colossus, though, but that's his prerogative. Clem decides to go for an immediate drop into the main base, and Zoun had no idea about it until this very second, but was already suspicious of it, so get on him. I'm just thinking, maybe kind of naturally, what would a Terran do after the situation? They would attempt to go into the main base. They saw nothing that really shot up. The Phoenix count was reduced to 1. Why wouldn't they try and go for a drop into the main base? And if Zoun had not literally warped in Stalkers and had them in position, if they were anywhere else except, you know, basically right here, Clem probably fully unloads and gets to do a lot of damage before being pushed out. Not sure it actually wins the game, but I think it would have been very chaotic, and Zoun would have been worse for it. So he just nips that in the bud. Doesn't have to worry about it, although it was definitely something to worry about. And now we can focus more on his game plan, which with a 3-base setup, completely saturated now, not getting his gases not completely, but getting there. He's got a little more wiggle room. He could probably get a little more offensive earlier on in this game, while doing so with only disruptors. It's awfully dangerous. A zealot run by seems to have done nothing. Clem was quick to respond. And now the front army for Clem is looking a little bit weak. It's a little bit small compared to what Zoun has been able to build up. Obviously faster reinforcements for him. Once again, fearing the main base drop once you lose track of that Terran army. Sends the Stalkers into the main, and they're just shy of having Blink, so it would have been a bad idea for Clem to force that issue. And Clem's in a, still I think, controlling spot. The way that Zoun has to play defensive until he has a bigger army with this. If Clem was a worse Terran and had just decided, you know what, I'm not going to do anything, let's just go home. Let's just forget it and go home and macro perfectly. That's when a Protoss and Zoun's skill set would go ahead and take that as a sign to push out. Because you can get across the map without being harassed and poked at and potentially dropped and sniped and all that good stuff. And you can start abusing their own chokes and their own SimCity. But if you're constantly under threat, it's a bit more dangerous to do. So Zoun's going to take it nice and slow again. 4th base is on the way up, building the disruptor count. Keeping in mind Zoun, that Clem is going to try and split up the army at some point. And he chooses the perfect time to recognize the split. Upgrades once again in favor of Clem. But it's disruptors, so who cares? Gives a what? This observer, by the way, is a really good observer. It's a very good observer. It deserves all the treats in the world. That's a big mistake, I would say, for Clem. That gives so much information to the Protoss. It really almost like wraps you in a nice warm hug when you have an observer like that. It'd be the bestest if the Terran was literally camping with their entire army underneath the observer, and then you really feel quite safe as the Protoss. But even still, you know a lot of what's going on. You know, at the very least, they're not back at home. They must be on my side of the map, and if they're on my side of the map, they must be looking for opportunities to kill me. So if that's the case, let's defend. That alone is quite helpful. Second observer, not as cool as the first one, but very helpful nonetheless. Also able to see when it's a split versus a whole ass push, and this is the whole push. It's hard for anyone to break up the ramps of Data C here. There's so much splash. There is the static defense. If it wasn't Protoss, it'd just be chokes to run through. And Clem has got to try elsewhere. Both of them maxed out. Both of them perfecting their respective late game armies. Clem has seemingly found Zoun out of position. 4 disruptors, 6, 7 disruptors are waiting. He's going to try and grab a couple of them. And if had that been timed a little bit faster, that would have been 2 disruptors, 2 disruptors, 2 disruptors, and a snowball effect. Fortunately for Zoun, that did not happen. Enough of them connected together that he could shoot them all together. And Clem had to respect that. But now, disruptors are missing from the main force. Clem wanted to take advantage of that, but might have bitten off more than he could actually chew. Also, again, a bit of an anti-timing. Now he's going to finish some of those upgrades, but also now the disruptors have entered into the battle. They've caught up with the rest of the army, and Clem's not going to get the easy-peasy find on a worse Protoss army anyways. Still would have contested a little bit, but missing the disruptors pretty critical to the Protoss army. This is, I love this little pre-setup, you know. Some disruptors on the backside and reinforcements are still being cut off by Clem. He was sending a 5th base over, but it wasn't slapped down. It wasn't a planetary, so he is going to be okay giving that up for now. Just like, yep, all right, yeah, fine. You got me. I'm out of position. Can't do anything about it. Pull it away. Pull it away. And then push it back. Didn't take too long. And a 5th base might also turn into a very quick 6th. Oh, there you go. Yeah, definitely. There you go. So double expanding as Zoun takes a single expansion 5th base, but one that is also somewhat aggressively targeted. They're both expanding to the top left of Data C. They're crunching it down. They're making probably anyone who gains momentum is probably just going to straight up win. Now let's see who that is. Protoss working their army into a very large concave is usually not what they want to do. was maybe hoping that would turn into a bit more of a game of, well, I caught this army, and then I caught that army, then I caught this army. But it's just a concave. And concaves are good. Disruptors are a little bit alone. Good focus fire right there. Zoun was going to whiff the disruptor shot anyways. But good focus fire. Zealots are able to find, I think, the landed planetary? No. It, once again, just lift and leave. So it's a delay, but it's not as bad as losing it, which can happen as you're also focusing on the main engagement, even for the likes of Clem. But it's not just the Zealots on top of a would-be 6th base. It's Zealots in the 3rd base and Zealots in the main base, headed right towards that researching fusion core. It's pumping away, and now it's dead. That opens up the opportunity for Zoun to go on the left side and take care of the planetary, even before the SCVs went to repair. So that was easy peasy, and Clem realizes that there's not much to do right now. Everything has gone to shit very quickly. The most he could do is go for a bit of a base trade, and that's exactly what he's going for. He's able to take out the next before the recall happens, but inevitably, the Protoss army will return. And is this the army that the Terran is going to win the game with? Maybe, if he focus fires like that, if more opportunities are given to take out those disruptors. Clem scans ahead, sees the incoming army. Disruptor is a bit slower, right? So he knows he can tackle the Stalkers for an extended period of time. He's continuing to lose some SCVs back at home. Okay, it seems to have stopped, but 36 SCVs is a lot. Well, not actually. 60 SCVs still available. Now it's more about the amount of mining that Clem has on his initial 4 bases. Zoun lost his 4th base, which was one of his healthier ones. Or that was his 3rd, actually. Yeah, so it's one of his least healthy bases. So he is still mining away very well, and he still has these disruptors. Probably the most important thing here, he can continue just buying time, buying position, and the fact that he lost his 3rd base is not as critical as it once was. Some disruptors accidentally get pushed to the front. Easy snipe there for Clem, and he is now going to back away, but he took a big old chunk out of Zoun's army and a little chunk of his economy too. Clem, if this was happening while he was getting his ducks in a row back at home, I think he would just be straight up winning. But with his 5th base still not settled, no SCVs on his 5th base, there you go, and the 6th was never put back down. DTs are giving him a headache as well. Once again, out of position, going to lose the planetary. Yeah, then maybe Zoun has a chance to bring this back. Oh, nope, not that shot, not that one. And now Liberators are on the field yet again. 8 Liberators spells doom, in my opinion. Zoun, the best thing he's got going for him is that he's going to have 3-2 soon. But he is up against 3-3, has been for a while. And he has found the army not as collected as it would like. Those Liberators a little bit more on their lonesome, so the Stalkers take advantage of it. And now it is Clem once again retreating, basically acknowledging that he wasn't set up for this. And he can take a much better fight if he's just prepared. But his preparation it keeps on going poorly. He's never quite as prepared as he wants to be. Liberators do turn around and siege up, but not in time to protect the command center. Zealots go into the main base, and you know what? All this dodging, weaving, escaping, sniping, it's actually taking a toll on the medevac energy. They are not healing up most of this army as another stim is used to try and chase down Zouns. It has taken down most of the robo units, basically all of them. One single Colossus remains, but Zealot reinforcements can actually start chopping away some of these Marauders. Everything is at half health. And the medevacs are all out of juice. No more medevacs on the way. Liberator count also has been halved. It was at 9 at one point, right? So now it's at 4. I mean, these are actually big issues. This is exactly where a microbull army like what Zoun has is going to do well. And Clem is probably feeling pretty desperate. He's lost so many command centers. He's lost so much time when it comes to, getting an economy. He's now long distance mining with most of his SCVs. As I had pointed out earlier, Zoun had been kind of comfy on 2 rather fresh bases mining, and is only now getting back to replacing his 3rd. It wasn't as big of a hit for him as it feels like all of this hubbub has been for Clem. The supplies still favor Clem, absolutely, but his actual supply, holy shit, is one disruptor away from being gone, of course, but then also is another stim into a Colossus from being gone. This is not as it would actually appear in the numbers. The supply, it doth lie. If Clem could settle on a 5th base, even get maybe a cheeky kind of hidden 6th with his main, I'd absolutely be calling it game over once again, but until that happens, he's not going to be able to replace some of the crucial aspects of the bio ball. Zoun has steadily built up a force that is once again good against half HP bio. And then also defending with a choke. Clem hasn't really tried to go back into multitasking, drops and all that, so this base, I mean, it's not the best base to take, but it is up and running once again. And he's even taking the top left. Heals have come in a little bit, but just not as much as you would want, plus all of the sims over and over and over again. Command center is forced to lift. It is going to survive, but it is not mining. And we have now an even game, even supply, uneven upgrades, and I'm not sure that's going to matter. 5 disruptors in play once more. And Zoun knows that he is winning this particular tug of war. Couple Liberators siege up, but the stalker count is high enough to tackle them. Disruptors push off the bio so the stalkers can focus on taking care of the Liberators. Zoun certainly knows how that interaction works. And, well, that was a weird recall. That was maybe a bit of an overextension. Some of the units, oh my god, I take it back. It was a bait. I don't think he was actually that far ahead, the 500 IQ, but that worked out brilliantly there for Zoun on the timing. He does have a knack for always having one more disruptor in his back pocket, so some of it has to be purposeful. But he kind of got disjointed over here is the only reason he started to lose control, but that disruptor just made up for it and then some. And again, Clem's having such time replacing any units. And now that he's lost it, well, there's really not any coming back from this. 1DT finds the attempt at a sneaky base at the bottom right. That was a perfect timing on Zoun's part. And Clem has unfortunately let this game go a little bit. At one point, heavily up in supply. Knocking on Zoun's front door. Base trade made things a little bit wonky. But I would say the actual base trade itself wasn't as devastating as the kind of extended consequences from it. How long it took Clem to recover, which really never happens. So it was, I think it was possible that he could recover. It was technically possible. He had the SCVs, he had the command centers, but to actually get your units over to the mineral patches, get your command centers actually planted and defended, that was a different task entirely. So Zoun will not go down 3-0. He will fight back in this best of 5. The best of 5 continues on to Tropical Sacrifice. In the bottom left, we have the red Protoss Zoun. And the top rated is Clem. Who certainly had a good lead in game number 3. Unable to turn it over into victory. Bit of a bummer. Well, that has a lot to do with Zoun's positioning and read on the game. Able to use his disruptors in a very professional way, basically. Big surprise, professional player can use things professionally. Okay, sure. But, you know, a lot of people give Disruptor a lot of shit. And there's the opposite extreme, where people give Disruptor way too much love. And sometimes it feels like the middle ground, not just in accepting that they are an important part of the Protoss army and a crucial part to the game, and I think give us a lot of enjoyment when we watch games. It's more about when we play against them that we hate them. It's not just that middle ground that's missing. It's more the middle ground of kind of acknowledging how well they can be played in ways other than Big Boom. The Big Boom is awesome, or terrible, depending on your point of view. But the control, the space control that they give, much like a siege tank, but more active, is pretty cool. The way that they help retreats is pretty cool, and the way that they force the units with them to help them retreat is a balancing act. The way that they push away the bio ball so that the stalkers can engage the liberators is, again, a balancing act. And that's personally why I've never really had a problem with the Disruptor. One, I don't actually have that many games where I feel like they're unplayable. where I'm Terran, they're Protoss, and I just sit there going, disruptors, am I right, guys? I don't actually have that feeling all that often. But then too, as someone who mostly watches better players than me do it, I always feel like there's a balancing act. It's not really just one person does one thing. Now, do I believe that it's harder on the Protoss to do their portion of PvT than it is for the Terran? Well, yeah, that's where my bias might start showing. But you gotta give a lot of respect to someone who uses the Protoss balls correctly. And Zoun has been known for doing it correctly. For pretty much his, not entire career, because again, he was one of those players that has been playing a long time, but was under the radar, so no one really cared to remember the name of Zoun, you know, back in like 2016 or whatever. But yeah, of his fresh start career, whatever you want to say, it's been something he's known for. High Templars are definitely filling that same space. All the descriptions I was just talking about. But I think the balancing act of EMP and High Templars is honestly just really hard to legitimately balance. And it's not as easy as saying, well, clearly the EMP upgrade is too overpowered. Because maybe it is. Maybe that changed the dynamic way too much. But you don't want to go the opposite way and scale it back too much and then suddenly Storms are way too good. Like, it's hard to balance, especially since the time at which we kind of consider Storm Charge to be like one of the best phases of StarCraft. Oh, we have something important going on, so I'm going to have to hurry up here. Was like parting Marine King Prime, right? Way back in the day. That was before people were really freaking good. So, I don't, like, the dynamic kept on changing. We had Terran get better with Ghost. We had Protoss get better with feedback, so on and so forth. But we're here where we are right now, and Disruptors kind of fill that role the best. And we also are here with a very aggressive engagement from Zoun that just fell flat on its face. Like, I thought I was about to miss something important in that maybe Zoun was going to do some severe damage. And, it didn't. It did not. That was a bit of a disaster, actually. Zoun, you know, he gets this proxy pylon up too. And I guess I was expecting it to have a bit more pepper on it. A little bit more spice. And it really ended up being the 3 Adepts into Phoenix. I'm not sure, maybe Zoun had initially scouted something different, because I can't check what he scouted a minute ago, right? Maybe he didn't realize how many Marines are going to be out, but it was a Reaper Hellion opener. He knew that much. So I don't know. That was just very unfortunate. Phoenix were a little mistimed. Yeah, let's move on. Clem defends that, is defending the Phoenix, and Zoun has, well, once again opted for faster double gas than the natural, which I figured meant robotics bay, but he has changed his mind. Because you can get a lot of gas when you go for a Twilight Council opener for the goal to be, you know, a bunch of Archons or, of course, Storm. But this was a Robo opener into 4... Well, Stargate opener, obviously, into Robo, into 4 gases, and then Twilight Council. So that, to me, feels more like a change of mind, right? It's kind of scary, though, because you're resetting the technology branch. There we go. The technology branch. If you were then to go into Storm, of course. It's not really resetting if your plan was to get Charge and Robotics at the same time, but it is delaying. That is certainly true. It did delay the Robotics bay. So, Charge is a quick enough upgrade. Wouldn't have been worried about that not being finished, but now I'm worried about a Colossus being involved, or a Disruptor, whatever he wants to actually get to. So we'll see if it's fine. We'll see if it actually works out fine. Obviously fit his 3rd base in earlier, once again, like last game, so that's giving him, I think, a stronger start to a series. Not that Protoss can't play with a later 3rd base, but I think it does make it more awkward for them. And then Tropical Sacrifice being, 1, a larger map, but then also 2, very defensively set up here. Probably lends credit to the idea that he could get away with pushing off the actual robotics facility. And especially when he then uses the time waiting to actually build units. It's not like he was fully dependent on that single Colossus, which is now, only now, being started. He did have a decent amount of other units. Charge is a fast upgrade that was looking to finish. Force Fields could have bought that extra time. Clem's still going to try and abuse the positioning, as much as this choke can be just force-loaded off, right? It can also mean the Zealots are going to be running down a ramp into tank fire. Exactly, as seen here. I'm a little late to the pickup. Might have been a little scared of the Phoenix to be able to chase it down. Does pick up some of the units, so far, so good. Keeping his army alive on the front lines, the very front lines. Zoun is down that upgrade. Zoun is about to be out of shield battery overcharge, but Zoun now has the Colossus. A little bit of a backstab as well. Wouldn't mind helps kill the tank. A little blip of a Phoenix lift on the tank twice. I guess took maybe one shot out of the equation. Still not able enough to kill it, and lots of bio left over. Ooh. Tank finally goes down. And that was not so simple and clean. Kingdom Hearts would have words with you. It was a bit of a scuffle, wasn't it? Zoun has his third base up and running, which I guess is the most important thing. And his Colossus is alive and about to be joined with a buddy. But it's not that his third base was even saturated during all that time. He did have to stop building probes, so now I think we just have a transfer. Yeah, that's exactly what it is. But that's kind of perfect, isn't it? To be able to predict that. It's, I guess, a sign of a very, very good player. So he's technically saturated. And now the fourth base is on the way, so if he now has time to build probes, I think he can do it. So he survives. Clem is forced to, completely reset the momentum. And so retreat all the way back home, get his saturated third base up and running, regroup his army, and then push out again. That's exactly what he's gonna do. Still tank-based. Might eventually have a swap over for the factory onto a reactor, but for now it is a robo-based... Well, it's not... From now, it's more robo-based, I suppose. We're not at, 20, 30 zealots. I personally am a bit suspicious of a continued tank play whenever Terrans do it. Oh, boy! Also just running headfirst into the army. Whoops, a daisy. Very quick to adapt to micro, to get everything sieged up. But Zoun got a lot of kind of freebie shots there that weren't supposed to happen. Delay the tanks from being somewhere important as well. And it's going to get a few more, again, before the tanks are really hitting something important. But actually, he's going to take just a straight-up engagement. So it's coming in from the backside once again. Critical to the success. Good focus fire there from Clem. The tanks never looked away from the main army, but two Colossus still live. Disruptor is going to buy, again, crucial time here. And the shield battery also would have helped. If it was necessary, it looks like it kind of wasn't. Clem's going to be pretty frustrated not to have dealt any damage to that Nexus. He was stopped short. Zoun had still never actually gone into pro production, by the way, guys. So, again, we see these bases, and it seems like it's A-okay for the Protoss. There's some drawbacks here. There's some downsides. Third base was saturated almost perfectly, timing-wise, for the main base running out, but that still means, that's not all the mining you could have. Now the fourth base, isn't saturated either. But a necessary sacrifice to survive. Zoun is trying to squeeze every last penny from the economy that he has to actually build a decent enough army. Right now he's a little gas blocked. So he's got to be reinforcing with zealots, which aren't necessarily what you want when they just get slaughtered. They run into the concave and get absolutely slaughtered. Tank is actually helping with this engagement, surprisingly enough, and Clem had a lot of concave to work with right there, but the shield battery overcharge kind of scares him off. More disruptors reinforcing as well. Clem, I feel like he actually wanted to push that issue more. I am kind of just straight up surprised that he moved away. Huh. I don't know about that. That felt very, very good for a Terran. Even if there was a bit of apprehension, like, oh, what if a Zealot's coming from the backside, or even a Disruptor? He still had so much room to play with, but even if that had happened, I think he would have been able to say, okay, that's what you're doing, I'm going to back away as he sees it. It wouldn't have been a gotcha move. But that's the choice that he made, giving up that momentum, now having his army a little disjointed. I think he was setting up to deal with harassment or go for a drop. Now it's kind of alone. The rest of the army is coming forward, but Zoun takes the opportunity to get a couple of disruptor shots. Not exactly sure what they grabbed. There's some blood on the field, so a handful of bio units and a lot of damage on those tanks. He's very good about repairing them, isn't he? Zoun strikes, and the iron's hot, right? That's the saying. Sees that Clem is full-on retreating, decides to go across the map and try and use the positional advantage that robo units can give you to great effect, and it was okay, it was good. But Clem collected himself in time. And now Zoun is a little bit more saturated. He did actually build a couple more probes, but is also, of course, starting to mine out from main and natural. Got Double Forge working now to catch up on those upgrades, which are not as bad as I think all of the previous games. I'm pretty sure Clem had always been able to grab 2 engineering bays, start up 2-2. Still working on the... Well, he does have 2. He just hasn't started +2 armor. So, Alright. Could even have a situation in this game where Zoun is ahead at some point. Alright, Clem does remember 3-2. Tanks are in position, but mostly alone. Stalkers are going to take the opportunity. There was some remnants of bio that manages to trade, and this might not be too bad. Chasing down the disruptors, yeah, I think it'll be good enough anyways. Some units died in the trade, but every last disruptor will fall. Even this Colossus taking some damage for Zoun. Looks like, you know, maybe I should actually try and save that. It was kind of a bad situation either way, though. Stalkers did blink to save the Colossus, but then also lost some of their lives, and Clem gets a pretty instant return. Zoun was a little too over-aggressive, a little bit. Not so much that he has thrown the game, and not that he has thrown anything, actually, because I never really consider him all that much in the lead. It's always been me more scared for Zoun than Clem, even in the game that Clem lost. It was only towards the last minutes that it was pretty clear that Clem should be scared. But I don't think he should be scared here. He gets a kill on the Nexus. It had finished, I think, just as he arrived, so unfortunate timing there for Zoun, who at least is on his way to replacing it. And now we have what I call the Yellow Army. That is Charge, Colossus, Disruptor. So it's not particularly microable. You don't have the Stalkers blinking around, chasing down the air units. It's just yellow. And when it's pure yellow, it kind of feels like it's a one-and-done type of army. You push and you win, or you lose. It's also vulnerable to Liberators, which have not made an appearance yet. A little bit of a run-by on top of that Planetary. Hasn't done too much. Certainly not worth looking away from this main engagement. Once again, Clem wary of the reinforcing army and his slower reinforcements, just the way the game goes, is going to back away. And that I think I understand a lot more. I wonder if he looks back at this replay when he was up however many supply over here and says, yeah, I probably should have stayed. Well, anywho, he's gonna try and set up another angle of attack, but to be honest, this is kind of a almost a rookie move. You know, there was enough important slow units that you say that that's dedicated, but it was not a big enough force to really do anything with the dedication. So it just loses some expensive units, I feel like, for no particularly good reason. And now he's trying to collect everything together to get what was hopefully a very big concave, kind of coming in a bit weirdly timed. Turns into, yeah, a fight that's more one fight than the other fight than the other fight. Which was not ideal for the Terran. Zoun doesn't take a humongous lead or anything from that, but it was, could have been better for the Terran. I don't know if it could have been much better for Zoun, but I think it could have been better for the Terran. That army doesn't engage when it does. Because, I mean, more so than trying to do a little bit of a weird run-by, it looked like he figured he could move his main army from here all the way down here before Zoun responded. And if Zoun was more concerned with moving his army up here, that is correct. And the Liberator Siege, the Tankus Siege, and the rest of the army comes in as well. But that did not work out that way. It just made it so that Zoun cleared up 10%, 10%, 10%. And now we have DT harassment, which everyone loves. Terrans certainly do. And the DTs aren't going to go for that planetary right now because the jig is kind of up, but they are going to potentially go in a little bit later. Zoun, now on the aggression, is going to be able to start picking off these Liberators, ideally. Never let them get up to a really high count like he has in the previous games. Often being his death, actually. And they're both maxed out. 3-2 to 3-1. So Clem does still have that upgrade lead. And is now finishing the, or starting the +2 for the Liberators. No range on it yet, because the fusion core hasn't been made. We're getting there, but still have to worry about this Protoss army. The choke here with the orbital, not working in Clem's favor. I think he just needs a moment to actually lift that. And Zoun's not going to over-dedicate. Kind of punished once for it, but also once you start realizing you're running out of disruptor shots, you're inclined to back away. Liberators are sieged up, but they do not have missile turrets, and it looks like those DTs kind of stuck past anyways. Yeah, excellent eyes there on Clem, I guess. Realizing what was going on. Zoun realizes what he realized and just blinks away to return another day. And will continue to abuse this particular position. Now, that was 6 disruptor shots out of what is now 7 disruptors, so I'm pretty sure that's it. I think that was number 7. Nope, I was wrong. Good thing I don't play this game. And some of them are going to have their shot once again, but Clem realizes this might be a moment, tries to move in, but just a bit shy on the actual army count. And Colossus got a lot of shots off. While the engagement lasted a decent amount of time, it was a lot more about focusing disruptors, so Clem wasn't like digging into the rest of the army, and it's not the golden opportunity he was hoping for. Now we have DTs blinking aggressively on top of the army. More reinforcements come in, and that's also what was missing from that potential pounce. It was just all the reinforcements. I guess they were chasing the DTs or preparing for the DTs that ever actually came back. If he had had all of those Marauders when he realized disruptors were out of shots, he might have been able to push the issue there. Scan reveals a mining base, not completely mining, and this one reveals that this base isn't. Those are the almost GG scans. The, okay, is this a really close game? Or isn't it? And the reveal was that it's close enough. No one should be tapping out. No one's really screwed. But it's getting a little concerning that I haven't done anything to the Protoss in a little while. And you would like to change that. Fortunately, not gonna get your base up and running. Command Center Sniper once again. Zoun's mobility in the late game being one of his biggest strengths in all of these games, and giving him the game for Game 3 is inching him closer to getting Game 4 as he once again gets a double. Command Center and Planetary going down, one fell swoop. Nexus does get shot down too, but yet again it is Clem getting one thing, Zoun getting 2. 2 is greater than 1, you're welcome. Zoun is kind of doing better. Does have to cancel a nearly finished Nexus, so that does kind of sting. But one player is maxed out, the other is not. Clem is diving after Nexus, now diving after Disruptors, which he should not have done. Oops. If a Protoss player doesn't realize they're about to dive, they could make a very, very big mistake in only shooting one Disruptor at a time. But as soon as the Protoss realizes that you're diving, you shoot them all out. And then the Terran really can't do much about it. If he had retreated to the left, his Liberators would have been forfeit, but the game would have probably continued. Or the base trade, base race probably would have continued. And it might have still gone sideways, but Disruptors did not die. They did not get punished. And now it is Clem heading into Game 5, having lost all the momentum in this series. Now the series is tied up 2-2 in the top left of Moondance. It is Zoun. In the bottom right is the blue Terran. It is Clem. This was the upper brackets quarterfinals of HomeStory Cup, by the way. So both of these players had a second chance at life. Who has to use up their second chance? We'll see. Drama. For those who haven't watched HomeStory Cup, it's legitimately drama. For those who did watch it, you might already know the answer. Still very fun games, in my opinion. And worthwhile, the cast and the watch. Very happy to find the HomeStory Cup replays, because apparently they were basically just like out there but hidden. So shout out to Jessu for hearing my cries and saying, oh yeah, they're out. What's up? Is there a problem? They're just like hidden, I don't know. No public announcement for it. Because the patch is on the way. So you know, faster you can do these things, the better it is for like content and viewership and all that good stuff, sure. But it's also the patch is on the way. And the patch not only can severely change the game, perhaps, but it also breaks replays. So I was really happy to get these, I guess, as soon as possible. Engineering by Block is a first in this series, I believe. He might have wanted to go for this in the very first game, but I don't think so. Just thinking that that was when he last factory expanded, but this isn't a factory expand. Oh, yes, it is. Yes, it is. So it's the 1 gas version where you don't spend any gas anywhere else. So you can actually get a factory off of 1 gas. And then you don't really get anything gas intensive from the factory either. It's Hellions most of the time. So you can get away with it. And it gives you a very fast Hellion push in which a Protoss who has not started the wall from the get-go, which basically most Protoss don't. They wait for their third pylon to start walling that. Second, in this case, actually. So he did have that option. So I guess professionals definitely do the second pylon more often. But anyways, basically you don't start with your gateway here to 7 score there, right? So if you get really fast Hellions, there's only so much a Protoss can do. It can be a little tricky. But it doesn't look like Clem's going for the Hellion version either. He added a reactor to the barracks. Has not swapped it off. And then, you know, does have the command center as we did expect a factory expands, but not going to be the Hellion thing that I would be most worried about. Zoun, did he get to scout this? No. He hasn't gone back in to see what the reactor is added on. So the Adept got enough scouting, basically. It actually got really nice scouting. So it saw that the reactor was still in the barracks, which was kind of the first important scout, but it was even able to see the factory had a tech lab, just in case there was any question on that one. You know, if you didn't see a factory at all, there's possibilities. But kind of figuring out what it is. It's also Moondance, so I always come into this and I'm hesitant to believe in the Protoss. I think it's a tough map for them to defend a lot of pushes on. If we talk about going into 3, 4, 5 bases in this matchup, I don't have really strong opinions on it. But if we talk about your initial 2 bases, I really fear for Protoss. And if Clem is doing a 2-1, 3-1 push, then that's exactly what I'm afraid of. Protoss, even when they totally expect it, and they've had to deal with it as long as Moondance has been out, still mess up against it. So yeah, that's what I'm concerned about. What has Clem been able to scout, by the way? I haven't checked his vision in a little while. Something got in here. Saw that it was a gateway on the front. Shield battery as well, because Zoun was not exactly sure what was on the way. So a shield battery is safe play. Blink is going to finish up, and that's going to give Zoun a lot of confidence in controlling the battlefield. He's pretty much known ever since that Tech Lab scout that this is not going to be something harassment-based. It's not going to be a Widow Mine drop. Very unlikely to be a Liberator. Okay, well, his control's not great so far. So his stalkers don't have to stay at home. In fact, they really can't. They have to be doing this. So losing 2 stalkers without trading out very much is not the best start for this. It is exactly the build that I was afraid Protoss had trouble with. Cyclone even still alive here. I would have appreciated more SCVs. I think 4 is usually a good number for it. That blinking was kind of cute. It not only ensured the stalker would get the kill, but it also gave the tank splash the chance to kill the Cyclone too. Like, just in case maybe 1 stalker shot didn't do it. Anyways, and the stalker survived. You live to tell the tale. How about that? Excellent adept usage as well. Tanked the first tank shot. And Clem could not redirect the tank fast enough. So even after a pretty abysmal micro start to this, the micro, when the push actually came to shove, was pretty spot on. And perhaps you could say Clem's counter micro was a little off. Now, this wasn't a full dedicated 3-1. It wasn't a combat shield push. It also is more dedicated. But it does make it really does flip the script very quickly. You know, I go from watching the tanks push across the map, killing 2 stalkers in this game, and thinking, oh lord, to watching Zoun handle that and thinking, for Clem, oh lord. Like, it goes the other way pretty quickly. It's not that Clem was all in, it's not that he's super far behind, it just means that Zoun has a lot more freedom. Though I personally think, like, the worst part is over. And there's games where it's done enough, there was enough of a trade, that it's, okay, fair. Let's continue on. No one's really favorable here, but I feel like the Protoss can be pretty happy with how this game's gone. Stalkers to harass, always very nice. Stim is finished though, so, you know, don't get too bold with this. And the Warp Prism will probably be best used to threaten charge lot drops later on. Both players opting to take the half-seas base, 3/4 base, whatever you want to call it, on the backside, which Clem does scan. That honestly looks like it's off to me. That looks like it's supposed to be here. You know what I mean? I don't think it is. I think it's just the angle, but that kind of freaked me out for a second. Anyways, he knows it's in the back base. So, this is... We know the dynamic of Moondance. The dynamic is that the 3rd base is safe in a lot of ways, but the unsafe aspect to it is that the shared choke as time goes on, especially against siege units, you know, specifically against siege units, can be problematic. But only if the siege units siege up on that choke, which Clem was not able to do. He had to pull back to handle the Zealot run by, and not to be overwhelmed by a potentially prepared Zoun. And I think that pullback did make a lot of sense. So 10 SCVs went down. Even more lost timing on abusing that shared choke. And Zoun is once again on the map, looking for fights, looking for picks, taking the map vision as well with what he can. Warp Prism, Zealots, every which way we look. Not a whole lot of time to build observers, but one is floating across the map now to perfectly position itself to see pretty much everything. The only thing that Zoun's missing is a little scouter off to the very bottom left to see if a drop is on its way. That's the only thing, man. Clem gets a little bit of scouting as well. Is going to see the timing of the 4th base intense. Kind of. I just might want to re-scout that, actually, but it's pretty much the case. This Marine is a freaking hero. Dives into the Protoss base. And is going to grab a probe, isn't it? Get it! Get it! Freaking have a probe. Don't you dare let it get to. What the hell? Kill it. So what did it scout? It scouted not the 4th base, but again, the army movement, timing. Probably guessing that it really was on its way. Then it scouted the main base, of which it was able to see the 2nd robo on the way. You gotta be pretty confident that Clem actually clicked on that, which really just signifies that there is a robotics bay, even if you didn't scout it, which technically he didn't, but that's what 2 robos mean, for sure. So he knows it's going to be good old disruptors again. It's been 4 games, why would the 5th be all that different? It could have absolutely be Colossus first, because Zoun has gone both ways for that one, but again, considering how the last 2 games specifically have gone, I suppose. I would not be surprised to see the disruptors. So Clem should be most wary of the disruptors, because they can place themselves offensively and then try and do exactly this! That was a nice hit. That was a nice hit. Clem reacted a bit too late on the split there, or the attempted runaway. Balls, 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 balls. I really need to get a sound thingy, a sound button for that song. Warp Prism is at least going to be caught. Yes, no, yes, no. Nope, just kidding. So that's gonna live. And Zealots are already in the natural anyways, killing a handful of SCVs, doing some decent damage for their cost. Engagement on the top side, though, is actually gonna start off good for Clem. The Zealots running into a bit of a meat grinder. Upgrades are even, and that was a decent amount of Zealots, but just the angle they had taken far away from the rest of the army, not ideal. And the tanks are maybe minutes later than expected, but still, they are encroaching on that choke. Not quite there yet. Zoun being able to move and get a concave like this is pretty important to his defense. Clem is looking to hammer this over and over and over again, and hopefully carry it on to victory as he reinforces from the units that were defending against the Zealots. It's basically him versus the Disruptors. Disruptors, the best thing Zoun has right now. Zealot count, not all that intimidating. His upgrades, not all that intimidating. Basically, they're very even. Disruptors can change a very even game very quickly. One tank gets destroyed, but the biocan's also pretty scary. Now we have Widow Mines reinforcing as well, which are going to give any increase in Zealot numbers a bit of a problem. More consistent Colossus are now out, and I think that is going to help, but that was the battle of the choke, right? So if you push through it, you're in the disadvantage. If you get pushed through it, you suddenly have a little bit of safety to it, right? If now Clem is the one pushing through it, especially when you have the two Colossus consistently throwing out that splash. So Clem is going to find it very difficult to actually end the game with that, and certainly you will not. The game has once again evened up as a tank all by its lonesome, dies to a couple of Zealots. And now Zoun's on 4 bases, Clem is on 4 bases. Upgrades start up pretty evenly timed as well. And we get ourselves a very even game at number 5, at least so far. Things can change in the blink of an eye. Ooh, nice pickup there. Disruptor is not able to get those fantastic shots. Planetary wasn't actually finished, or started, so it is not finished. That was a little late to that. And Zealots, once again, are going to try and head into that natural. It's just a handful of Zealots, but any chance you have, the 3 Zealots are pretty worth it. And Zealot, apparently, surviving long enough to get into the 3rd base. So another macro game between these two. These guys going at least over 15 minutes every single game, I think, right? Usually with PvTs having so much variety in their openers for both races, you know, you're gonna figure at least one of the games goes stupidly long, another game is stupidly short. Liberator harassment, not doing so much. There is a cat. He is caterwauling, I suppose. Cloaked Widow Mines have also been a maybe unsung MVP in this entire series. I kind of noticed it in the first game, but didn't really make a remark on it. But they've been taking advantage of Zoun's often lack of observers with the main army. They've been taking some of the disruptor shots, which Zoun only does when he thinks that he can afford disruptor shots for a single Widow Mine, but still. And they have been giving vision to Clem. So it is very important, of course, for Zoun to take care of them, but more so than you might already be thinking. The Protoss army gets across the entire map without being stopped, and that spells bad news for the Terran. Even as they try and turn this into a big old concave, the split of the army does not seem like it's good enough. All the medevacs healing off to the right side, almost none to the left and the bottom, and there you have it, in the blink of an eye. We have Game 5 going to Zoun. More abrupt than I was anticipating. Leading up to this moment, totally even supply. Upgrade's actually better for Clem for another 20 seconds. But he had just lost track of the army. Yeah, just completely. And he did have an opportunity to turn it into a surrounds. But all of his medevacs only off to the right side. Coming in clumped up, of course, too. That's the initial way that the AI is gonna send in units forward. The sandwich becomes the sandwiched with the Zealots on the backside. Yeah. That's how a game ends. That's how the series ends as well. Zoun on the brink of defeats at 0-2. And then on the brink of defeat, I feel like in every other game besides that, able to claw his way back and advance to the upper bracket semifinals. GG's. Freaking good series. Hope you guys enjoyed it. And more HomeStory Cup replay casting and maybe even some analysis will be on the way in the future.